Now, after a spate of migrant-related incidents, including the alleged rape of a British schoolgirl by 4 Afghan boys, the growing anger amongst ordinary folk at Britain's dangerously open borders is understandable. Newquay residents in Cornwall are the latest to plan a protest outside a hotel that's housing asylum seekers at the taxpayers' expense. But in a worrying and increasing trend, the peaceful demonstration is being condemned as racist and bigoted by local politicians. Those unsubstantiated claims against ordinary folk with genuine concerns follows on from the MSM's attempt to blame the protests in Knowsley, which is, of course, a staunchly left-wing borough of Liverpool, on the far right, despite the fact the initially peaceful protests were said to be triggered by this video of a migrant trying to chat up an English schoolgirl. In fact, there's even unconfirmed speculation that Antifa or the far left may have been responsible for the despicable violence that took place in Knowsley, a theory not weakened by this anti-fascist call to arms posted online by the local branch of the Communist Party. So, Nigel Farage is with me now. This is what the Farage, I should have said that. But Nigel, you started to expose this on your show last night. And it was really fascinating because there's potentially much more than meets the eye to what went on in Knowsley. But now we see this happening before the protest has even taken place. In Newquay, it's almost like if you just brand something racist now, you can try and stop folk in their tracks. But it's not going to work, is it? No,
I had a local resident on the programme last night, a local parent.
I heard.
A parent of a teenage girl. He came on the programme by telephone. He was too scared, even though he was a tough Scouser, he was too scared to come on himself. And the reason, of course, is that he'd have the Daily Mirror, the BBC knocking on his door. They'd find a Facebook post he'd made 4 years ago. You know the drill. But as he said, this peaceful protest was mothers, fathers, aunts, uncles, grandparents, deeply concerned that, and forget that one video, that over a period of several months, a lot of underage girls had been propositioned. Now, I've seen what's happened in Brussels. I've seen what's happened in Stockholm. If you allow a vast number of young males coming from cultures where women are not even second-class citizens, and let's be frank about that with much of the Middle East and elsewhere, then this behaviour to them is normal. The fact that some yobs turned up, dressed in black outfit, with backpacks, balaclavas and sledgehammers, they were not the residents, and yet that was used by media over the course of the weekend to denounce Knowsley as being full of right-wing bigots. I mean, stop me if I laugh. It's probably the most left-wing part of the whole of the United Kingdom. I mean, golly gosh. But overnight, Dan, there's been an even more interesting development. A group of 180 charities, but actually nearing 500, with all local contacts, come together in a refugee coalition to urge government and politicians to condemn any protests against refugees. That's how they framed this whole debate. And here's the irony. People at the Refugee Council have been funded with tens of millions of pounds of public money. So your money paid in tax has been given to organisations who are now telling you, do not speak out on behalf of your young girls, do not speak out on behalf of your community, or we will label you as a racist bigot. And sure enough, in Cornwall, as you covered a moment ago, when again there are genuine concerns in that town and in St Column Major, just down the road, already, even before the protest had begun, genuinely concerned citizens are being labelled as racist. Now, this is all an attempt to stifle debate of any kind. On the one hand, you've got people who genuinely believe there should be no national boundaries of any kind at all. The old classic sort of Marxist, Leninist types, Trotskyite types. On the other, you've got conservative politicians. I mean, Andrew Mitchell, Foreign Office Minister, we have a duty to these people. Do we really? Do we really have a duty to young Albanian men who throw their passports into the English Channel so we can't say who they are and check whether they have a criminal record? I don't think so. But they know that tens of thousands are coming. Tens of thousands more are coming over the next few months, and they want to stop any public debate. And I tell you what, they ain't going to stop me.
Well, no. And I don't think anyone should be stopped from having this conversation. And actually, Nigel, and we know because we're in touch with our viewers, this anger is only going to get worse, isn't it? This isn't going away. This is not a problem that the government and the MSM can just sort of sweep under the carpet. This is an issue.
I mean, my biggest fear, I don't want to depress your viewers and listeners too much this evening, but my biggest fear is what's happened in Sweden. I mean, you know, I knew Stockholm. I knew Malmo 30 years ago when I had a proper job, when I was in business, and I used to visit regularly. And these were, Stockholm was the most relaxed, gentle, easygoing city I'd ever been to in the world. And now there's a gun crime that takes place every single day. Now, of course, if you dare to move into this territory, you're accused of racism. But this isn't about race. It's about culture. It is about culture. I'm talking about huge numbers of young men who come from parts of the world where gay people are chucked off buildings and where women are treated in the most vile and abusive way. And that is the culture these young men have been brought up in, and they can't see anything wrong with it. And my big fear, as the numbers mount all over the country, is that this is what we are directly importing into British towns, cities and villages. And I'm not going to go silent on this. This is really fundamental, vital and important. And what is so astonishing is there's virtually nobody in the entirety of Parliament, as our elected MPs, prepared to stand up and make this position clear, because they fear social media assault. They fear, you know, they won't be invited to nice dinner parties. I mean, and so in a way, you can blame the left if you want to. You can blame the loony left if you want to. But actually, Dan, I place the blame on so-called conservative politicians for not actually having the courage to call this out and to say they will stand up for our culture, our communities, based in Christianity, based in forgiveness, and increasingly in modern times, based in the principle of equality of opportunity. And people are not defending that.
I mean, and obviously there are a few exceptions, Lee Anderson being one, but you've seen what happens to someone like him the moment that he speaks out against the orthodoxy. But look, Nigel, there was another astonishing development over the weekend that I really do want to talk to you about. So this was around the troubled anti-radicalisation programme Prevent, and it seems that voices on the political right were being monitored for potential links to so-called right-wing extremists. And shockingly, Nigel, your former party, the Brexit Party, and Jacob Rees-Mogg, who's, of course, joining GBNews very shortly, were among them for supporting Brexit and, quote, being proud and patriotic. There were also columns by Rod Liddell and Douglas Murray routinely used in training material to help staff target right-wing extremism. I mean, this is astonishing.
Well, I've had years of this. I mean, this is no surprise to me. I've had years and years of this. I mean, if I go back into the past, I've been called into Metropolitan Police headquarters, accused of all sorts of extraordinary things. So I am not in the least bit surprised that my name was among the list of runners and riders. And it shows you the bias that exists within the establishment in our country. Anything that is vaguely patriotic, I mean, God knows, please don't even say English. I mean, that is absolutely, completely beyond the pale. And these are the people running an anti-terrorism program that have overseen, and here's the one fact you want to really latch onto. Of the last 12 terrorist atrocities in our nation, 7 have been committed by people who were referred to Prevent and went on to commit crimes in the name of Islamic terror. And whatever I've done, and you can agree with my political career, you can disagree with my political career, I've never encouraged violence. I would never have tolerated it amongst anybody in UKIP. We never had any of it amongst anybody ever in UKIP. I have done nothing to promote a terrorist agenda, and yet, in the minds of our absolutely blinded London metropolitan elite, what I represent is something that they believe to be evil. And it's a really funny thing, because 10 years ago, as the pressure cooker was building up towards that Brexit vote, I sensed the disconnect between London and the country. Do you know something? It's even bigger now.
It is. It is. And the thing that's most shocking, Nigel, is they have not learned the lesson from Brexit. They have not learned the lesson at all. But I think you're right, you know, prevent is not fit for purpose. And that story at the weekend was just further evidence of it. Nigel Farage, absolute brilliant stuff. And, of course, Nigel will be continuing this conversation 7 o'clock tomorrow night here on GB News.